Welcome back to Shifting to Solids. Today we're going to be talking about the circular pattern feature in Onshape. Like always, let's get started with some sketch geometry. So we'll click that top plane, hold down Shift and S, letter P to hide those planes, and N to normalize that view. So in my line of work, when we're using stuff on the plasma table, I typically draw everything that I can in a 2D view. And you know that if you watch Onshape orientation, that there is a circular pattern tool in the 2D sketch options. However, for a lot of people in industry, it's better if it's a feature. I was talking with Toby and some other guys, and it seems that it's easier to edit a feature than it is to go back all the way and edit the sketch. And sometimes in industry, you might not even be the one that's making the sketch. It might be coming from somebody else, but you need to go edit something that you might not have access to, or it was a hand-drawn print or whatever. So this is another way you can go about getting some geometry in a different way. So we're going to start with a circle. So letter C to start that circle. We'll go off of this origin point, and I just need that to be 10 inches in diameter. From here, we'll go Shift E, and let's make that a 1 inch thick. But what I want to do is I want to flip this the other direction. You can reuse circles, and you can reuse your sketch stuff, your sketch geometry. But sometimes that sketch geometry, that sketch is underneath because it always wants to go above. It's thinking you're extruding up from where you're at. And that's usually the case, but today I want to go the opposite direction. So we'll say, okay. And from here, now I'm going to select this face, start another sketch, and I'm going to draw a little another ring up here. So we'll say that should be 5 inches. And I want a through hole of, we'll go 3 inches there in the center. Okay. Now, could I have done this all in one sketch? Absolutely. But I know there's a lot of you guys that are out there that are trying to follow along. And sometimes it's better if you get it chunked out because it's easier to pause that video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this piece right here, just this outer ring, press Shift E, and I'm going to turn this from 1 inch to 2 inches. And we'll say add. And last but not least, I'll click my center, Shift E, and I can click remove. And we'll say, okay, so now you'll see I have this part, kind of looks like a hub, like a wheel hub. And that's essentially what we'll be making today. So let's go ahead and flip on to our other side. And let's add some pegs, right? We need to have some things to rotate around a circular pattern. They could be holes, they could be pegs. Actually, we're going to do both. So on this bottom face, let's start a sketch, Shift S, and to normalize that view. Sometimes too, you'll notice if I press N, the way I was rotated, it's going to normalize it as close as it can get. But what you need to do, if you want it, like see bottom is kind of tilted, you can rotate these arrows and get yourself back to what you're looking at. So there we go. That's kind of what I was looking for. I'm going to start a circle. This circle is going to be a construction circle. So we need to press Q before we actually select our geometry, and you'll see it turns into a dotted line. I want this to be 8 inches in diameter. And then we're going to do another construction at, we'll do 7. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to do one circle up here that is 0.25 or a 1/4 inch. And actually we'll go 0.5 on that. We'll go 1/2 inch. You'll notice though too that this got left on. I left my construction line on. No big deal. Quick fix. Select that line and press Q on your keyboard, or come up here where it says construction. You look up top here. You can see that I can just toggle that on and off to turn that into real geometry or construction geometry, whatever your drawing actually calls for. And then we're going to do one more. I'm going to do a circle underneath it, but this circle is going to be a bolt hole. So we'll make this one 0.25. We'll say okay. So you'll see now I have two circles on that top sketch. That bigger one, that 1/2 inch circle, is going to be a stud, and these bottom circles are going to be maybe alignment holes, bolt holes, whatever you want to call them. So let's give those some thickness. We'll add an extrusion on the first one, and we'll make that a 2-inch stud. We'll say okay. Looks good. Turn our sketch back on, Shift E again, and now this time we're going to select that one. However, instead of being a stud, we want to do remove. So make sure we look up here and we make sure we click that remove. And you'll see it saying, okay, how deep do you want it? Typically when I do holes, I like to do up to face. And then when I select that face, I just go to the opposite side that I want that hole to drill into. Could I do through wall? Absolutely. Could I give it a dimension? Yeah. Sometimes the inch that it gives you is plenty enough for it to go through. Just keep in mind what you're working on and tailor it to your needs. So we'll select that and say okay. And now you'll see I have one stud and one hole located right underneath one another. But the whole reason you're here is to learn about circular patterns. So let's go up here to circular pattern. We'll hover over it. Again, it's to create, add to, subtract from, or intersect multiple instances of parts, faces, or features. Specify the axis, angle, and number of instances. Optionally, specify instances to skip. So just like we did last week in our linear pattern 3D feature, I'm going to show you a little tips and tricks you can do with the circular pattern. So let's select that. And now it's asking me part pattern. So if I wanted to pattern this part, I could say, hey, let's do this whole part, and the axis of that pattern, essentially it's throwing 4 copies along itself. So this is not the way that I would go about doing this. A part pattern would be, let me delete this real quick. We'll start another sketch, normalize that. Let's give this a big circle. Just throw something way out here, okay? So a part pattern, now we're close enough, let's call it 100. There we go. Would be if I did this circular pattern and I selected my part, the axis of this part is going to be here. You'll see now it's patterning that part however many times I tell it. So if I say I need 30 of these, it's going to pattern 30 of those all the way around this circle that I made. Now, obviously, that's probably not what we want. 1, these parts aren't finished. And 2, I don't know in what aspect you would do this, unless maybe you're planning out like an assembly line and you needed some sort of routing for this or whatever. But that's how you would do that part pattern feature. You could do centered. You can do skipping instances. So I can say, nope, I don't want that one, that one, that one, or that one, or whatever amount you don't want. You can select windows like you normally do. However you need to do it, that's how that part pattern feature works. However, what we're here to do to finish this part off, we're going to go to feature pattern. So I'm going to zoom in to, we'll just delete that. We'll zoom back into our part and we'll do circular pattern again. I'm going to feature pattern, I'm going to pattern the extrude number 4 where I started that stud, and the axis. And what's kind of cool, because everything's concentric, I could pick here as my axis and it's going to give me my 4, but I could also pick here because everything's defined. It doesn't matter really which axis you pick. I can go about because of it's all based about the origin. If I did something offset or it was kind of funky, you would need to make sure you picked that correct axis. But for what we're doing, let's make sure we pick this one just so we can get good habits on how to draw. Angle, 360 degrees all the way around. Instance count, I can say maybe I want 8 of these. And I can do equal spacing, or what's cool is you can tell it a specific, maybe I only want equal spacing, but all on one side. Maybe I only want it to go between 20 degrees, and that slams all those together. Some sort of weird pattern, right? We'll go back to 360. And I have my studs now where I want them to be. We'll go with 8. We'll say okay. Okay, now this is really cool. I could go into my circular pattern, and let's say I did want to add that extrude hole with it. I can just click the features and click extrude, and you'll see it'll add that hole along with it. Okay. However, let's say in this instance, maybe I wanted a hole between or under every peg, but I also wanted a hole in between every peg. Well, I would need to make another circular pattern. So we'll do circular pattern, feature pattern. We're going to pick that second extrude feature, same axis, but this time instead of being 8, we're going to do 16 holes. And I get a hole not only in the same location as my peg, but I get one centered perfectly between each peg without having to do very much math. This is really, really intuitive. It works fairly well. You can do the face feature as well, face pattern as well. Similar ideas. You're just following along with your axes that you have. So it's crucial to make sure you plan stuff out so it works accordingly. That's going to do it for us today. Hope you guys are learning a lot. Next week, we'll be talking about the curve pattern. And I know a lot of you probably think circular pattern, curve pattern, it's got to be the same thing. They're actually a little bit different. Yes, some circles have curves, but not all curves are circles. So keep that in mind for next week. Very similar steps, but a little bit different when we go about doing it. So that's going to do it for us. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.